because we've won a couple of them now, people feel like I'm like a wizard expert. So we got 5 phase 2 SBIRs. We got an OTA. We got we're prime on an IDIQ.
You talk to a bunch of people, and out of 10 people you talk to, maybe one's interested. And after going to a handful of bases, we met some folks who said, hey, look, we know this isn't ready for prime time yet, but we like the direction it's heading. We like your mentality. We see the future. We're on board. And that led to us applying for and then receiving a phase 2 contract.
Hey guys, Ricky here. This is a special episode because not only are we focusing on SBIR, but we are going to bring in a few experts from past episodes that you're going to listen to. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I've never sold to the military, I don't have any relationships, I've never done anything with the government at all, then, Brian is really a good case study for you. He's going to give you a couple minutes on just some of the things that he learned working with the military. He had no prior government experience. He had never actually talked to a military officer before applying for the SBIR program and going out and winning one after the other. He did an amazing job networking and doing some of that work. So listen to Brian. He can talk a lot about what the process looks like, and make sure to check out his episode. So here is Brian.
People in uniform who are trying to help you, who are vouching for you, they don't want to look like an idiot to you. Like they want to, a lot of times they feel, this was like a mind-blowing thing. A lot of times the majors who are kind of like the vouchers or the colonels who are kind of like we want this, Brian, we're going to do this with you. They feel blessed. They're like, wow, I'm so fortunate that you're giving me the opportunity, the opportunity to go get this $1 million from these other people, which is like crazy to me. But that's like sometimes like the dynamic. They feel so honored. And, because we've won a couple of them now, people feel like I'm like a wizard expert. So they feel like I can't, just once you get a little credibility, you get more credibility and kind of like build off of that. So we got, we got 5 phase 2 SBIRs. We got an OTA. We got we're prime on an IDIQ. And like, this was kind of part of I have another very simple rule to sales, which is, you can't sell crap to people if they don't know you exist. If they know you exist, you have a 1% chance, and that's way bigger than 0% if they don't know you exist. So I just kind of let it be known. I reached out to everyone. I had, setting up phone calls, having hour-long meetings with the person that may or may not go anywhere is risky, but you build I built relationships with people. Like I got relationships with some people that I met cold, that I went to their retirement party in Kentucky, guys transitioning out of SOCOM. So like I really worked. The right word is hustle. I hustled really hard.
That was really interesting listening to Brian and how he won. He ended with, hey, he really hustled. Look, he went to someone's retirement party in Kentucky that he met and networked through. He used LinkedIn. He used a lot of different methods to find the right people to sponsor his SBIR packages. It's certainly something we can help you with. But now I want to transition over to Oliver Noteware, who we talked a little bit about at the beginning. And again, he has a full podcast episode here in the vault. Oliver won multiple SBIRs, and he also used them, because once you're a phase 2 graduate, you can use them to help win direct purchasing from the government or sole source purchasing. And he also used this bottoms-up approach where he was selling to units. This is very unusual, but SBIR can open up a lot of doors for you, right? You just got to make sure that you are using it the right way. So without further ado, let's listen to Oliver.
Phase 1 was basically AFWERX saying, great, you have this commercially available solution. Here's a little bit of money. Go do customer discovery in the Air Force. And so I think we went to 6 or 7 different bases. And it was sort of, classic business development. You talk to a bunch of people, and out of 10 people you talk to, maybe one's interested, and they become your champion. And then they connect you with other people who are interested. And you just pull the thread and see where it goes. Right. And after going to a handful of bases, we met some folks who said, hey, look, we know this isn't ready for prime time yet, but we like the direction it's heading. We like your mentality. We see the future. We're on board. And that led to us applying for and then receiving a phase 2 contract.
Gotcha. So the phase 1, usually and we don't have to get into what you guys are paid, but typically a phase 1, like you said, it's a small amount of money. It's usually under a couple $100,000, where you might have a white paper or something, or some type of report that's due. But like you said, typically you're going out and you're kind of looking for a customer, right? Looking for, hey, is there somebody in the government where this fits their need. And usually AFWorks or whatever organization is going to have an idea that it does or fits within like a mission that they're focused on trying to provide solutions for. Then the phase two, that's usually a much larger contract, but you need a government sponsor, and that's what you guys found. So everything's a little bit more difficult with the phase two. But so how did you find that phase two? How did that go for you guys?
It went well, all things considered. In the application part or process of the phase two, we said, hey, here's what our existing technology is. Here's what we think the warfighter needs based on our conversations with those tactical units. And here's what our proposal is to adapt from commercial to DoD needs.
Right.
That got approved. And then we spent about 12 months working with the schoolhouse down in San Antonio to ensure that we could adapt some of our solutions to their needs. It was a fascinating process. It was just as new to us as it was to a lot of our defense stakeholders, because they were, like I said, captains and senior enlisted. This was brand new territory for them. And they were really excited, which was great for us. They leaned in. In fact, we had an airman come hang out with us at our office in New York for a couple of weeks. The unit let them go TDY specifically to help us make this transition. It was phenomenal.
Up next, you're going to hear from Luke Robertson, who's an amazing business developer in the defense and government space. He's going to describe what SBIR is, the different phases, how you can go about applying for those and, achieving the SBIR contracts with the government.
Well, the Small Business Innovation Research Program is it's established in statute, and fundamentally what it is it's a way for the U.S. government through various sponsoring agencies like the U.S. Air Force, the Department of Homeland Security. They all kind of run their own programs within the larger SBIR program, and it's a way for these organizations to be able to take advantage of the innovative, the innovative talents of smaller companies. Oftentimes, the small companies have fantastic ideas, but they simply don't have the capability to be able to bring these ideas to bear. They sometimes aren't quite able to even productize it, and they certainly aren't able to make it through what they describe as like the valley of death, where you have one good idea, maybe one good product, but then it's a little bit more difficult to then be able to build that thing out at scale and be able to go under contract in a way that you can then turn your company profitable. And the Small Business Innovation Research Program is designed fundamentally to be able to bridge that gap, to be able to bring these innovative resources into the government. And because it's designed for small businesses to be able to sell products and services, it's designed to move quick. Small businesses don't have a huge amount of time. They don't have 18 months potentially. They need to turn a profit now. They need to have a customer now. So the program it's an application process. It's a contract, not a grant, although there are similar programs that are grants as well, where basically the government will put a small business on contract to build out what their product is. And usually what the government is looking for is a kind of a modified commercial product. So if the small business has a product and it's applicable to some commercial customer and it's proven, it's known that this thing is going to work, but it may not exactly fit what the government's needs are. Then what the government will do is it will pay that company to modify that product so that it'll be fully applicable to the government's needs. Once proven, once demonstrated success within this program, then the government arranges, and this really is the main strength of this program, is it will then arrange a simplified contracting onboarding process to be able to move from the prototyping stage to full-on production sales. Right. And I've seen a variety of companies, both for, the company that I worked for, I guess full-time, you could say, and also the companies that I've worked with as a consultant, being able to land these contracts and then be able to productize their idea and then be able to actually fully sell it.
Sure. Yeah, no, those are great. There's some great wisdom there and some great tips. I also do know that, the government has sponsored some solutions that weren't already being sold commercially. They were a little bit past the idea stage, but I do know a couple of companies where they'd won SBIRs and then that funding they were using to help develop that solution but it still would have a commercial and government in that case, perspectives. Let's talk a little bit about the phases of the SBIR program, right? So this is something that I discuss a lot with clients. So, phase one, and we've kind of joked about this, right? So you have a great idea or a solution, maybe like you said, it's already a product that you're selling commercially, and you think that it would be a great thing for maybe the Department of Defense. And whether, say, we find an open topic or a topic that it could fit under, because sometimes these topics are very specific, sometimes they're very broad, right? Base of the Future was one in the past, which, I mean, you could drive a truck through that thing, But let's say you find a topic and you submit your SBIR, and what happens then? So what are the three phases? I know there's a phase one, there's a phase two, and then it can go on from there. What do you view the phase one SBIR as?
Let me answer that here in just one quick second, but I guess I think maybe I'll try to add a little bit of clarity to what you mean by like the topics and the submission. And
Great point.
So,
Yes.
so basically, the SBIR program, like I say, they're run by different agencies. So to discuss the Air Force SBIR program kind of in specifics, what the Air Force will do is it will release topics that some Air Force organization or user has stated that we need something, and there is we don't know what exactly we need, but it needs to. We know that there is technology that's out there within a certain field, like you said, like maybe again base security, some kind of smart camera thing, and then what the government will do, the Air Force will do, is they will release a topic saying if you have a product that fits somewhere in this topic, we can fund it under this particular like funding line, and then oftentimes they have what's called an open topic, which is government doesn't know what innovative technology is necessarily out there. They certainly don't know what great ideas are in some individual's mind. And so they will say, hey, write a proposal and send it in. And if we like it, we'll put this under contract.
Right. Just to stop and ask you a quick question there, because, for companies that have maybe been writing proposals and a little bit more familiar with the government process, some proposals can be extremely difficult to put together. Where would you rate the SBIR proposal? I know they're all a little bit different, but if you give us some of your perspective on that.
Generally on the easy side. The SBIR program is designed, in many ways, it kind of runs as like the venture capital arm of these different government organizations. And so there's an understood risk to the government when it comes to funding these proposals. And so what the government fundamentally wants to know when it comes to doing a SBIR application, they want to know about the proposing company. They want to know that this company has like some skills. So they're going to be looking for like bios of the people who are involved. And then they're going to want to know what the technology is in generalities. And so that they can judge, like, is there a technical merit to this? Like, does this have some value? Is there some application that this company has identified? But we're generally looking at a few pages of like narrative write-up, like a PowerPoint presentation, and then a small, but I guess you could say significant, but graspable amount of administrative documents, various cost volumes and, cover sheets kind of stuff. But in relation to a typical government response to a proposal, which may be a substantial lift, especially for a small company to put together a proposal, a SBIR proposal is generally much, much more simple. And I think this leads us directly back to your question about these phases, right? The phase one, phase two, phase three. And so I'll finally get around to answering that now. But the way that the government, once again, I'll discuss on the Air Force so I can have a little bit more in the specifics, although other agencies run in this way as well. They fund technologies based on a couple of different phases. And phase one is something of more like market research. So the government will fund a company up to $50,000 to basically propose what their idea is and propose what they think the application to a certain government agency's mission may be. And this is a very simple application. We're talking like a 5-page white paper, a 15-slide PowerPoint deck that describes the technology, describes the company, describes the application.
I want to take a quick second to talk to anybody watching this that's interested in starting a government contracting business. or starting a new profession in government contracting. The students that graduate our program, they go on to start their own consulting firms, winning high dollar consulting clients. They go on to land high paying salaried positions as account executives with companies that sell to the government. I'm so proud of the people that have gone through our program. And if you are considering either a job or a business, and by the way, some of our students are doing both, as I did. They're running a consulting business and they'll have an account executive job. It's transforming their lives. It's bringing true wealth to them and their families. Back to the video.
And what's the deliverable usually? So, hey, we put that together. We're basically saying, hey, we have an idea or a product. The government fits within your topic. And then the government comes back and says, yeah, that's great. We're going to award you a phase one. What's typically the deliverable? Because you're not actually modifying the product usually with a phase one. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So a phase one fundamentally is they're putting a company on contract to give them the legitimacy to be able to like interface with those government organizations. So you're on a contract to deliver a technology. Let's say, like you mentioned, a cybersecurity product. Now, what you can do is that you can contact those government agencies and say, hey, this is what we think you need. Is this really kind of what you need, or how would it be modified? And then the deliverable is a report. So fundamentally, what it is the government is paying a company to do the market research, and not just paying them to do the market research, but is then facilitating them to be able to do that market research,
Right.
to make sure that you're not, as a company, just some Joe Blow who has no connection to the government whatsoever, cold calling agencies within the military saying, I don't know who I'm talking to, but maybe you're the guy I need to ask if this is something of value.
An extremely difficult, not to cut you off, an extremely difficult subject for a lot of businesses trying to sell to the government, right? Because what you end up realizing is it's a relationship game, right? So once, companies get past the point where they figure out, hey, just responding to RFPs isn't going to cut it. There's something else that's missing. And then it's usually the business development piece, right? So some combination of knowing who you're selling to and then really establishing relationships, talking to those agencies. And we've often joked that the SBIR phase one, you're almost getting paid to do business development. So that huge BD lift that is difficult for small businesses, you're getting paid to do that with a phase one. It's an amazing opportunity.
It is absolutely an amazing opportunity. And it's a program that has demonstrated success. So
Right.
literally thousands of small businesses have gone through. This program's not new, although it's become much more formalized, and the application processes have gotten more streamlined and simpler in recent years. The program has been around for a long time,
Right.
and thousands of small businesses have used this vehicle for its intended purpose, and they're able to bring their products to the market in the U.S. government in a way that they would never have been able to bridge that gap before.
So that phase one timeline wise, so from the moment you put the application in, what kind of timeline are you looking at, assuming that you're going to win, right? So assuming you're going to win, what's the timeline look like for being on contract with the government?
About 4 months, 3 to 4 months. So every 4 months, the government will open up a round, like an application round. And so a company will build their application, their proposal, if you will, and then submit it through the website according to the standard, the rules and format as required. And then the government will review that and the other thousands of proposals that go in. And there's actually a pretty high selection rate. And the selection rate depends entirely upon the round. Who gets selected and how and what's being selected depends based upon what the government needs at that moment, specific funding amount. But then what they'll generally do is reach out back to that company within 3 to 4 months. There's been a lot of movement within the programs to try to shorten that. They would like to get that down to 2 months or less, and then go straight to a contract. The government will have the contracting officer reach out to that company, write the contract according to the proposal that the company put in. And it's a extraordinarily painless process. Once again, especially in comparison to other contracting alternatives.
Sure. So now let's talk about, I think, what the real point of this is, right? For any company, and this is what I tell my clients, and I'm sure you tell yours, is the point of SBIR isn't to win a phase one. The point of SBIR is really to win that phase two, at least initially, right? Because that's where the money is going to come to help you develop your product or solution, right? So once we have phase one, right? Now, not only are we getting paid to do business development, but as you point out, just as importantly, if not more importantly, they're helping you facilitate some of your business development. What is that for? What do we need to get now in order to get to phase two?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could, I guess, even expand upon that, I'd say the point of the super program really is to get to phase three, which is the production level contract. And in many ways, in order to get to phase three, you would go through a phase two, although not necessarily. You can go straight from phase one to phase three. So to add a little bit of clarity, phase one is that business development, that market research, that analysis of the marketplace. Phase two is once that analysis is complete, and then there's been a gap that's been identified, and there's a specific government user organization that needs something, and that thing is not available on the open market. Then phase two, the government will pay up to $750,000, and there are times in which it can go up even beyond that, but generally $750,000.
They could be met by the agency that sponsors it, correct?
It could be. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It helps. In fact, if you have matching funds, the probability of selection for the program is, I don't want to say close to 100%, but it certainly helps. You don't need matching funds. So the agency that wants your product. So you go through your phase one, and in the phase one, you identify a particular organization, some major, some colonel, some GS employee who is representing this organization, who is able to say, yes, this is what you've proposed, like what your technology has value to our mission. Then
that's one of the major accomplishments you need in a phase one, right? Is
right.
Just finding someone to say, and I mean, I've sponsored these on the my organization has on the Air Force side and the acquisition side, which is really usually signing a memo of some sort, saying, hey, this is something that we would have benefit from. It doesn't mean that they have to fund it, but it does mean that they're signing a memo saying, hey, we think that there's benefit here and there's a need.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, and obviously one way to prove that need is if that organization puts their own money behind the request. But once again, it's not required. But what is certainly important is to have someone who is of has sufficient authority within the organization to be able to speak for that organization to say, yes, we need this thing, right? You can always go find somebody who's going to say, well, that sounds interesting to me. But if they're not in a position to then like affect any sort of acquisition, then it's still helpful and it's wonderful, but it's not necessarily,
because we're not talking about, if we were talking about security again, I'll just kind of stick with that. We're not necessarily talking about the user of that security application. If it's, an airman or a captain in a flight squadron that happens to be using the tool, that's not probably going to fly, right? What we're really looking for is someone in an acquisitions agency, like a program manager, maybe a contracting officer, that will probably be the PM, possibly a requirements person. So could be someone not in the acquisitions, meaning the acquisitions being the field of putting companies on contract for the government and managing those programs. That's what we call acquisitions, at least in the Department of Defense. But it could be, a colonel that's in charge of requirements for the flying unit we talked about earlier, right? That's, up there on staff. He could potentially be one of the signers on this.
Right. So, I fear that I actually haven't been like terribly clear, like as I discussed this about like what do we even mean by like why are we talking about like a memo in anything? And so to back up just a touch, phase one is that market research. Phase two is the adaptation of a commercial technology to an Air Force's need, or a R&D to develop a brilliant idea into a prototype. And in order to get a phase two funding, there needs to be so phase one, there's only the push. It's basically you as the company saying, hey, I think this is of value. Let me let me articulate what the value is. Phase 2 requires a push and a pull. So phase 2 requires that government organization or user or somebody within it to say, we need this. And then that organization will then sign a memorandum of understanding, not with the contractor, not with the company that wants to build it, but with the Air Force's SBIR program, saying this technology will benefit my organization's mission. And whoever signs that memo needs to be somebody who has some level of authority. Program managers, folks on staff, absolutely great. It doesn't necessarily have to be. So the way that the Air Force breaks it down is there is a customer and an end user, and usually like an end user would be like maybe a squadron commander, perhaps maybe somebody who is down in that unit level, not necessarily like the tech sergeant, but it could be.
Okay.
And then the customer would be
everything I just said. So, okay. So I thought it had to be someone a little bit higher up on the food chain, but you're saying even an end user like that tech sergeant might be able to sign off on something like this.
The higher the rank and the more the authority that somebody has, the more likely the more weight that signature carries. Although for a phase 2, there are no specific restrictions to who can sign it.
This goes to show too just how much detail is involved in this, because these are constantly changing the SBIR program and the requirements, and so I learn something new every day as we move through this. So that's interesting.
Oh, and what you just described in terms of like who needs to be signing is kind of there's a phase 2B, a supplemental funding program in which, as a phase 2 R&D program moves along nicely, then the government will pile on and say, hey, we're going to double down on this. This is really working out well. And that one requires the, specific GS-15 or 06 above to sign off. But just the phase 2 MOU, usually the end user will be like maybe a squadron commander, and then the customer will be somebody who's closer to a position that they can scale the solution across the organization. So that's where you're looking at somebody at staff or maybe at the PDO. Once again, not required. So it is still possible to have. In fact, I recently saw a successful phase 2 with the 2 squadron commanders. A communication squadron commander and a maintenance group commander or maintenance squadron commander, and both at the same base. Neither one has the authority to expand the solution across the entire Air Force, but the Air Force saw the value of the technology and said, "Hey, we see that this is something that's worth funding," and then they did.
That's amazing too, because one of the biggest challenges for a lot of businesses is figuring out who to talk to, because a lot of times they'll be talking to somebody in the Army or the Air Force or one of the other government agencies that maybe could use their solution, but has no authority to make a purchase, right? And so they're like, hey, I just talked to this Army colonel, and this is a real example. They brought a solution, this Army colonel who, if he was running an operational unit, he was never going to authorize a $20 million purchase for the Army, right? It just wasn't his job. It wasn't his responsibility. They're like, hey, the Army knows about this, and I'm just waiting for the sale to come in. I'm like, well, you're going to be waiting a long time, because that Army colonel said it's a good idea, and it is. But you got to picture it as, thousands of offices within the Army, and none of them talk to each other, and only a few of them have that authority to purchase, right? So what's interesting about this is what you're saying, hey, with this program, we can actually find a user that thinks this is a good idea, and they could sponsor it. And so now it just makes it a little bit easier to go in and have a solution authorized by the government to start working on. Let's pivot and just talk a little bit about, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but phase 2, right? So phase 1, we've won. We found either a user or an acquirer to sponsor the program. We submit the application, which is a little bit more in depth for the phase 2. And then what happens then?
So when phase 2s, you usually have a, about a year, 18 months. It depends upon the specific organization, like period of performance, generally around a year to year and a half. So phase 2s are pretty significant contracts. They also get funded in the same timeline as the phase 1. So a few months after the submission goes in, a Air Force contracting officer reaches out and says, congratulations, you've been selected. Let's go ahead and put this thing under contract.
Hey guys, back with Ricky. These were great interviews with both Oliver and Brian and Luke. And you can check all of them out on prior episodes of this podcast. One thing that they all have in common is they are both all three of them are extremely hard workers. And with Brian and Oliver, they have amazing solutions. So really just understanding SBIR, and actually both of them, it was brand new to both of them when they went after it. And one of them, Brian, never even talked to anyone in the military or the government before. It was his first time doing that. So if you have never sold anything to the government, if you've never thought about it, I guess the point is that you can absolutely do that. It does take work and you have to understand the process, but you can absolutely win. If you want to go through our training, our coaching program, where we help our students and our clients, go through not just SBIR, but selling products and solutions to the government, because the government buys in a lot of different ways. And I would say whether you want to do that or not, less than 1% of all small businesses ever try to sell to the government or to the U.S. military. So there's a customer base here. It's an untapped resource, and they're required to buy from small businesses. So I would check out at least if the government is buying your product or solution. You can listen to our podcast. It's a free resource to help you kind of navigate the way of selling to the government or selling to the U.S. military. We have a lot of free training in here with subject matter experts and small business owners that have done it themselves. So hopefully we've inspired you to at least take a look at it, and hopefully we can help you in some small way start winning those contracts, because it really can be transformative for your business and your life. So this is Ricky Howard. I'm out. Thank you for listening.